Yo, what's good, everybody? Today is June the 23rd, 2026. Most gracious and Holy Father, we thank you, God, for yet another opportunity of prayer. Thank you, God, for just another chance to come together in fellowship one with another. We ask you, God, that you bless the viewers as well as their families as well. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Yo, what's good, y'all? Y'all come on in. Um, Give everybody time to come in before we get into quick questions. Probably won't be on too long. Um, want to say happy born day to my cousin Keith. I don't own the music that's playing in the background, so copyright whatever. I do not own the music. Not even sure if you guys can hear it, but again, shout out to my cousin Keith who's celebrating his born day on today. There was a couple other people, everybody that's celebrating on today. Forgive me, I'm just a little all over the place right now, but I wanted to go ahead live after consideration uh, from a few people. Thanks for those that reached out. Make sure that I was good. Nothing dramatic or whatever. It's just that a couple of videos that I seen, a couple of posts, and people in their comments and their thoughts had me in my feelings, and I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be like them. I didn't want to be caught up in my feelings, and I didn't want to say anything immediately. So I thought maybe we would do the show next week and cover the same topics, but. Why wait? Why procrastinate? Let's go ahead and talk about it. You know, I saying something about Juneteenth and whether or not it should be a holiday. Same thing with should blacks be celebrating the 4th of July. I kind of wanted to hear you guys take on that. Um, how do you guys feel about that? Uh, should Juneteenth be a national holiday? Should it be something that's celebrated? Should blacks celebrate the 4th of July? Even though, African Americans or blacks in America that were born and raised in America, knowing the history of the 4th of July, do you think that either one of them or both of them should be celebrated and why? Um, get in the comment sections and let me know what your thoughts are. And also, let me know what um, app that you guys are watching on, whether it be Facebook or whether it be YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's free. I would gladly appreciate it. We got to get our subscriptions up, so I do appreciate it. Hello, Rosa. I appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you so much. Hello to you as well. What's your thoughts? You guys get in the comments. What's your thoughts on should Juneteenth, first of all, be a holiday? And should we be celebrating the 4th of July? For those, and it's relatively not new, but just for a little bit of context, there's a lot of people that don't even know. Well, there's more people nowadays that actually understand the historical context of Juneteenth in itself. For years, a lot of people didn't even know. I hadn't even heard of Juneteenth. And that's because a lot of people that I've talked to, a lot of different things that I've seen, a lot of people over the years didn't know about Juneteenth. I actually began to learn about Juneteenth myself back in, I want to say maybe 97. But it wasn't until I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas that I had ever heard of Juneteenth. I didn't know what Juneteenth was. In fact, when I first heard of Juneteenth, I just thought it was a celebration that they had down there musically every year. that I looked forward to going to when I was in Little Rock. I didn't even know that it had historical context to it. It was just a musical festival, as far as I had knew at that particular time. Then I began to learn a little bit about more about the history of Juneteenth. Um, you know, it says, and just a quick summary for those that don't know, or that's late to the party. When I looked it up, it says the definition of Juneteenth is freedom finally came on June 19th, 1865, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas. The Army announced that more than 250,000 enslaved blacks in the state were freed by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people in Texas. By the newly freed people in Texas again. Um, so, in other words, when blacks got their freedom in America, to sum it up, to paraphrase, it wasn't until almost 2 years later that actually blacks in Galveston had found, heard about it. So, of course, we don't know that we wasn't there, but I always wondered about that when why was it such a delay? I know that we live in an advanced technology world right now. As far as social media, we have the internet, we have mailing systems, and so what was the such a delay that it took that long for them to get word in Galveston? Was it done deliberately? Was it just it's like why did the rest of the states know about it other than just this particular part of Texas? Um, I don't know much about the demographics of Texas, but I do believe that is in South Texas. I'm not sure. Um, so maybe it might have just been took a longer time for them to get the word to that. I'm not sure, but I always wondered. Not to say that this is the case. Me personally, I just always wondered, was it where um, the people in that particular area they wanted to try to continue to get free labor for as long as possible. So let's delay them, letting them know they are technically illegally. Oh, excuse me. They are technically and legally free, but do we want to let them know that, um, or do we want to milk it as long as possible? What are some of you guys thought as far as Juneteenth? Um, and it kind of I kind of question that the legitimacy of it. Me personally, just because it's like this day is significant for what purpose? That we were late to the party, or that those people that in that particular time were late to the party. Did it change the fact that um, they were already free? So it just brings about questions, and I want to hear somebody else's thoughts, or if somebody else's take on this. Um, how do you feel about it? Do you feel any way about it? Um, and to bring it up in the context to be getting any comments, it's just like for me, um, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a big fan of Juneteenth personally. Um, and this is my thoughts, and it's my right to have an opinion on whatever subject, so to speak. I don't really care how you feel about it. Um, but for me, I feel like Juneteenth has become a national holiday in this day and age, in this particular time that we're living in, because um, the powers that be, the people that run this government, they seen an opportunity where they could capitalize on it. I don't think that it has anything to do with merit or morale. I think everything is based on they seen another opportunity. Okay, let's capitalize on this. Let's make some money on this Juneteenth. Um, like all these Juneteenth celebrations, the T-shirts, the cups, the the banners, the this here, the that there, even the sales. Um, I believe it was a couple of years ago. I was like, see, this is why it's commercialized and it's all about capitalism, because they even had like a particular flavor. I forgot what it was. I believe it. I want to say Walmart. I'm not sure, but I want to say Walmart. They had a particular Juneteenth flavored ice cream. Like, I just think that we live in a day and age where everything is about how much money can be made, how much, um on my night. So I just, me personally, I believe that that's what it was really about. It wasn't about, let's really celebrate and honor the fact that these people were free. Were they compensated for those 2 years of the work that they did, or was it just the attaboy? Sorry, you guys are just getting word. Like, what was done for those people that were working as slaves, or the enslaved, that whole year and a half is like working for free. Like, were they recompensated? Were they, or did they just get an apology? I'm sorry to inform you, but you was over free. You was freed over a year and a half ago. 2 years ago. Um, so what you guys take? I'm looking for some comments. I want to hear. I don't care. I don't really. I know how I feel, but I want to hear some other perspectives on um, how you guys feel about it. Hey, what's good, Drew? I don't know if you really vested in it, Drew, but we're talking about Juneteenth here. Juneteenth is like a national holiday now. Um, should it be celebrated? Should Black Americans celebrate the Fourth of July, Independence Day? Um, what does it mean? And kind of want everybody to take on Juneteenth before we get into the Fourth of July. That's why I was waiting on a few comments for the Juneteenth. I seen another video on the Fourth of July, but I'll get to that next once we get off of Juneteenth. Um, yeah, Juneteenth actually became a holiday on June 17th, 2021. So it's relatively new, 5 years as far as being an official holiday. Um, and even though it's a national holiday now, you still don't get paid accordingly on that particular day. Uh, should blacks be able to take that day off for free? It should be. um, I don't know. But what's you guys take on that there? And then, do you? The last question I had too was, is marriage for everybody? So you could get into that if you want to, and we could come back to this because I had some thoughts on that too. So, it was, Drew said, explain Juneteenth. Okay, so Juneteenth is, long story short. Let me pull that up again. Okay, so Juneteenth is a holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. It is celebrated annually on June 19th to mark the day in 1865 when the Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and free the last enslaved Black Americans. So, pretty much what it was um, America was already free. That Independence Day. They first got the when the Emancipation Proclamation was actually signed. In short, these people in Galveston, Texas, it wasn't until maybe a year and a half, 2 years later before they actually got word that they were no longer enslaved and that the slaves were actually free. So essentially, these people in Galveston, Texas, they got a year and a half, 2 years worth of free labor because they didn't get word that the Emancipation Proclamation had already been signed and that blacks were now free. So all these years later, what they did was they commemorated that day that they actually got the news. That much later, they made it a national holiday. Um, So my question is, if the Emancipation Proclamation, even though they were free already, um, it was good, right? You know, out of national, um, what do you say? Out of the 11 federal holidays, it's okay. We get two, MLK and Juneteenth. Okay, and that's what I said. I just want to know how you guys feel about it, and do we really elaborate a little bit more if you can, right? On that day, you say we get two. But we know MLK Day, they fought long and hard about that and forever, before that became an actually a holiday. Um, and sometimes that's what you know me, right? You know me just as good as anybody else. I think that's my problem with things when it comes to situations like this here. I get it, um, and like you said, you're right. MLK Day, Juneteenth. Um, we got some black holidays on the books now, but you know me. At the end of the day, I'm always about principle. It's not always what you do, is how and why do you do what you do. Um, I just don't feel like it's genuinely given to us for whatever reason. You know, some people say, "Well, listen, free is free." Nah, everything that's free is like, mm, it's almost. Well, I don't really want to get into that, but it's almost like people and everybody has an opinion on this here and that there, but it was like the shot a couple of years ago. That was free. They were actually having different lotteries for people to take the shot. But was it in your best interest to take that shot? Um, that's for each individual to determine. If you feel safer or you feel healthier having taken that shot back then, more power to you. Uh, but just because it was free, was it good for you, or was it in your best interest, or was there an ulterior motive uh, behind why they were giving you something for free? Uh, So, like you say, yeah, you can look at it as blacks. We have two national holidays now, but are we the ones that's benefiting or profiting from the celebrations of Juneteenth, or is it the regular corporations that are having these sales, that are having these celebrations, that are profiting from it? Are they giving that back to the descendants? Are they trying to reach back to communities and put that money back into communities, or are they just profiting off? Okay, let's give them a national holiday because we're going to make all the money anyway. Like, where's the money that's being made? Where's it going? So why it take so long? Did you say 5 years ago it started? Yeah, it actually became a holiday in June of 21. Um, that raises another question. Um, But my initial question to why it took so long, Drew, I still want to know, and I don't have any historical context because I wasn't planning on talking about this, so I didn't get a chance to do a lot of research, and we might revisit it next week. But my question has always been, why did it take so long for the people in Galveston, Texas, to get this information that we were free? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It's almost like back then. I believe our graduation day was if I'm not mistaken, it was June 28th, 1993. That's when our class supposedly graduated, or those that graduated. Graduation was on June 28th, 1993. But if you guys remember, like before the actual graduation, we get word whether or not you graduated. You know what I mean? I remember that morning, I was so nervous. Not nervous really, but it was tension because everybody was sitting in the auditorium and you waiting for your name to be called to find out if you actually walking the stage or not, or if you got to go to summer school, or you staying back, whatever the case may be. So everybody was waiting to hear their name called, and as they were calling our names, we know because they was doing it in alphabetical order. So we were realizing that some names weren't being called. Like, oh snap! I only can imagine what it was like for Roddy, because Roddy last name Wilson, so Roddy had to, Roddy had to wait forever. But We had that maybe 2 weeks before the actual graduation. So let's say you didn't show up that day and you didn't find out until a year later that you actually graduated, so you missed the graduation. So now we were making that your national holiday or your national graduation day. Whose fault is it that you were late to the party or that you wasn't informed that you had graduated a year and a half? That and it's not necessarily parallels, but that's the first thing I can come to off the top of my head as far as comparison. Like I just always wonder if everybody else knew that the slaves were already free, why did it take the people in Galveston, Texas so long? And were those people that the slave owners in Galveston were they intentionally not informing um, the slaves that they were free because they wanted that much more free labor. They wanted to hold out as long as possible. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case. I just wonder was that it. I can't deny the possibility that that was the reasoning that they wouldn't let these people know that they were slaves. Because you got to remember, we're talking about a time where blacks were you could be literally unalive for having the ability to read and write. So imagine that. It was almost like how we use the word, how that word is always thrown around now. You had these gatekeepers, where these people gatekeeping, and let's say, look, we're gonna milk this as long as we can because once they realize they free, you know, now we got to actually find some people to work these fields. Now we got to find some people to work these whatever the situation was at that time. I'm not sure. I don't think they had factories, whatever, but the labor, the cotton, the gin, the oil diggers, or whatever the case may be, whatever they were doing down there in Galveston. Now we will have to find some people to actually replace these slaves who were working for free. So was that their whole motive for not informing them? I don't know. But anybody else had anything or as far as Juneteenth? Nobody had any opinions on that? Uh, just make me wonder. Like I said, I'll do a little bit more research and we can revisit it next week. Um, my bad. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I didn't see anything else about Juneteenth, so we can move on. 4th of July. So I seen an interesting. Somebody shared a post. Um, Somebody that I used to follow that I have officially unfollowed. Um, because I don't like the trolling that they do or that I feel they do, and that's their right to do it. So yeah. So this is when everyone can smoke that day too. Everyone can smoke that day too. I ain't sure what you meant by that, Jew. Um, and that's what I say. It's I was kind of triggered. I wasn't upset. Um, I just didn't want to say anything that I would later regret. That's why I didn't want to come on. But I'm a person that has few regrets, and I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. Whoever don't like the way I feel, um, more power to you. Keep me in your prayers. I really don't care. Um, but this is a pastor guy that I used to call a friend. Um, I won't dare say that we are friends anymore. Um, And I'm finally getting it too, because I remember back in election time, during elections, a lot of people were saying that. And I was saying that we talked about it on the show several times, where you were seeing different people. It's like, if you're down with this or you support this, I can't align myself with that. Um, and I don't, I wasn't there. I wasn't there, um, because everybody. If I love you, I love you. It doesn't matter whether you're what it is that you're into or how you feel about certain things. That love for you don't change based off of your belief system or what you practice individually, as personally. If you're a homosexual, if you're whatever, that's your life to live. I have no heaven or no hell to put you in. um I'm not the almighty. That's on you. What you do with your time is what you do with your time. But to me, I finally got to that point where now I get it. I finally get it, because it's like this person, this individual, everything that they do is, I feel like brown nosing. I feel like kissing behind, sucking up, however you want to, any term or phrase that you want to put into it, because it's like every chance that they get, and I'm talking about African American, but I'm talking about somebody that's actually black, um, a pastor. It's like they constantly taking shots at other black figures because they view things differently than them. And like I said, it's okay to view things differently. You can see things differently than me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to personally attack you every time your name come up. Every time. Sometimes we just got to sit in silence, especially when you call yourself a per se Christian or a follower of Christ. Why are you always, you know, gaslighting certain situations? But this person, they were they played a clip. They posted a clip of Joy Reid talking about the 4th of July, and how, I'm just paraphrasing what she said. Um, no black people that she know really celebrate the 4th of July. Yeah, we'll take the day off of work, and we might have a cookout or whatever the case may be, but we don't really care about the 4th of July. And the person that posted it was saying, here it is. Here is Joyless Reed berating um, America once again, and it's a shame, or whatever the case, however he worded it, so to speak. So I kind of, it kind of triggered me a little bit, and it made me want to hear you guys do it on the 4th of July. As should blacks actually celebrate the 4th of July, considering that in the Constitution, um, that people like to always go to, the Constitution. And I always say it, and I stand by it. The Constitution, when it was written, it was not designed, or did it not, nor did it have African Americans, black folk in mind at that particular time. Because in that same Constitution, they literally had it in the wording that blacks were considered as 3/5 of a person. So we were nothing, we wasn't even human beings. We were nothing more than property to the people that wrote the Constitution. So therefore, that by default, I mean, come on, people. If you want to drink the Kool-Aid and believe that it's for you, more power to you. But you were not a part of that. You were not a part of that equation. They did not have you in mind. Put it like this: they did have you in mind. I take that back. I spoke incorrectly. They did have you in mind, but they had you in mind as property, not a as a possession. They didn't have you in mind as another human being, as a person with the same equal rights as them. No, absolutely not. So that's one reason I always, when people like to go to the Constitution, Constitution don't mean anything to me, because it wasn't for me. Um, you know, so me personally, I don't care about the 4th of July. That is not no, like Joy Reid. I agree with Joy Reid. People that I know is like, oh my God, we ain't had getting all emotional thinking about America, how they fought for freedom and this here and that there. When as black people, we couldn't even get in the army at that particular time. You know what I mean? Like, you had to jump through all kind of hoops, so it had nothing at all to do with us. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna take a free day off of work. Or I'm gonna take double pay if I'm actually working that holiday at a job or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I might go to a cookout. But does that mean that I'm actually in support of the 4th of July? No. And it's like, what was it? I forgot what it were, where it was. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Something that Frederick Douglass always thought about it. And Frederick Douglass, you got to remember, Frederick Douglass was all the way back in the 1800s. You know what I mean? But he said this about, which I think that Frederick Douglass is a figure that we don't really talk enough about because the stances that, and as far as what we know anyway, I'm one of those skeptical people too. I believe a lot of times the history that we have is what they want us to know or information that they want us to know, but it was it really that way? I would love to know that because it seemed like Frederick Douglass was really a radical at that particular time and was proud to be a free black man and didn't have any problem with speaking um, fearlessly to people in opposition to the white man, so to speak. Uh, but one of the things, trying to find out ways. I want to see if I can find it so I can read the whole thing. Um, I don't think this is the whole thing, but here it is. I found something and I want to read it. This is what Frederick Douglass said. It's called the piece that I'm reading is a nation story. What to the slave is the 4th of July. On July 5th, 1852, Frederick Douglass gave a keynote address at an Independence Day celebration and asked, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" Douglass was a powerful orator, often traveling 6 months out of the year to give lectures on a abolition. His speech gave his speech given at an event commemorated the signing of the Declaration of Independence was held at Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York. It was a scathing speech in which Douglass stated, "This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn." In his speech, Douglass acknowledged the founding fathers of America, the architects of the Declaration of Independence, for their commitment to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He goes on to say, "Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. They were great men, too great, too great enough to give frame to a great age. It does not often happen to a nation to raise at one time such a number of truly great men. The point from which I am compelled to view them is not, certainly, the most favorable, and yet I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did, they were principles, and the principles they contended for, I will unite with to honor their memory." Douglass stated that the nation founders were great men for the ideal of freedom, but in doing so, he brings awareness to the hypocrisy of their ideas by existing of slavery on American soil. Douglass continues to interrogate the meaning of the Declaration of Independence. To enslaved African Americans experiencing grave inequalities and injustice. Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and natural justice embodied in the Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from our independence to us? I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. Would to God both for your sake and ours that an affirmation answer could be truthfully returned to these questions, then would make my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. For who is there so called that a nation's sympathy cannot warm him? Who so abhorrent and dead to the claims of gratitude that would not thankfully acknowledge such a priceless benefit? Who so stolid and selfish that would not give his voice to swell the hallelujahs of a nation's jubilee when the chains of servitude have been torn from his limbs? I am not that man. In a case like that, the dumb might eloquently speak, and the lame man leap as in heart. Uh, that's enough for now. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but you get the gist of what he was saying. This is a holiday for them. Drew said, all I can remember about the 4th of July is going to cookouts, drink, smoke, and make some money. So the real meaning of it didn't matter to me. I had my own meaning. And I guess a lot of people, I guess that's the way a lot of people actually feel about Juneteenth as well. Is what you make of it. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. Um and I would definitely respect that perspective. And I think that is what we do a lot of times in when it comes to religion, when it comes to family values, when it comes to love, just in general. I think a lot of times it really is um we make of it what it is that we want. We base our based on our own belief system along added into with our own personal experiences. Sometimes that's what conforms us to come up with these different concepts of how we view um, marriage, how we review what is the measure of success. Is success? I was listening to an interview earlier today, and I found it very interesting. LeVar Ball was talking, the father of the Ball brothers, and he was saying, he was like, "What do you commit?" He was asked the question, "What do he see in his sons that he instilled in them as far as the measures of success?" And he said, um, "What would you rather have? Would you rather have $5 million because, or would you rather have $5 million? Somebody give you $5 million, or would you rather make $60,000 a year and live peacefully?" And he was like, a lot of people were saying, that $5 million, and he was like, you got to understand, that $5 million comes with some. It comes with a lot. It comes with heartache. It comes with all kind of different things. You know what I mean? But that $60,000, you know, that's what it was. He was like, and you can't get minutes back. He was like, that 60,000, that 5 million is gonna call you all and have you. Hey, what's good, Thomas? That 5 million to have you going to different meetings. You got to go. You got different obligations with that $5 million. With that $60,000 a year, though, hey, you get to spend time with your family. You get to go to graduations. You get to go to birthday parties, and that's time that you can't get back. And there's also things that money can't buy. So, what is your measure of success? And is everybody measure of success is totally different. Um, what looks like success to me is totally different than what it may look like for you. Some people like to see them multiple zeros in their bank account. That's a measure of success for them. Where a lot of us come from, um, and I know a lot of you guys from personally, but where we come from, a measure of success is for me personally is being able to be here in my right mind, 50 years old, havingly be able to admit that I was a type of individual where I wilded out and I did things that I knew I shouldn't have done because I didn't think I would live to see 22 years old. It was just a different place where we grew up. So to be 50 years old, um, have two adult men as my sons, that's a success. It's not about money. It's not about for me anyway. Some people, nah, and I gotta have this, I gotta have that. Success looks like marriage and a family and the picket fence and whatever the case may be. Cool. Um, so everybody always has a different thing, but I thought that was very interesting, especially the way he put it, because like I said, no, we try to. I talked about that previously too. Everybody has a different perspective on that, because for me, I think that a lot of times when we talking about children, they don't know. All they know is that daddy wasn't there, or let's say mommy wasn't there. So I don't want to be bashing on the fathers. And happy Father's Day again to all the fathers out there. Thomas, Drew, Rod, all the fathers that are viewing. Um, so no matter what it was, the parent wasn't there. 9 times out of 10, though, it's like the father. I'm talking about fathers that are actively in their lives. Or you take a LeBron James, for example, or Michael Jordan. You know, people always like to say, well, he was sacrificing for his family. When you get to make $70 million, of course you're gonna have to miss some birthday parties. You're gonna have to, man. When they get older, they'll understand it and all that there. But my perspective is, whether you got an NBA game and you can't make that birthday party or that graduation or that high school musical, whether because you got to play away, or whether you got to work the third shift at minimum wage or $15 an hour to keep the lights on at the table, all that child remembers is that their parent wasn't there. Now, as adults, we tell ourselves, well, they got to get over it. I got to get this money, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't mean that child have real feelings about that particular situation. They wanted to be able. I remember I talked about it, like playing football. I wanted to be those persons because I used to see it all the time. After people have a good game, they would get up in the NFL or a college, or high school, and hi mom, and that junk used to literally like drive me crazy. Like, this is football. What happened? Where's the high dad? Hey, shout out to my pops. You know what I mean? So it was like nothing for me. I wanted to be able to score and look up in the stand and see my father in the stands. But unfortunately, because of life situations and where we were at, my dad had to work. So I think my father only seen me play football maybe twice in high school. You know what I mean? Um, so I understood, especially now as a man, I understood that he wasn't there because he was doing what he had to do. But it didn't negate the fact that I wanted to be able to look up in the stands and see my dad. You know what I mean? So who are we to say the degree to determine whether or not you're justifiable in your absence? Whether it's because you got an NBA game, or whether it's because you work second shift and you can't make it, or if you're a crackhead. People always, see, man, look what he done did to his family. He out there on them drugs, or he's an alcoholic, or he's this, or he's that. And I think that that's foul and that's wrong, because you can't because of based off of your processing, you can't say, well, this is acceptable. It's okay for him not to be there if he's doing this. That's just by your definition, but that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. Um, Julian said that's going to be viewed different by a lot of people, and that's my point, Drew. That's my point exactly. Because we all personally determine there is no right or wrong, but we all personally determine what sacrifice looks like. We all make that decision, conscious decision of whether we're willing to risk it all for whatever, and they just got to get over it, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? There have been times where I sacrificed and to go to make sure that I'm there for my sons, whether it be a musical, whether it be a sporting event, where I know I couldn't really afford to take all work, but I know when I draw back from my own personal experience, I wanted to be able to, um, you know, for my son to have that feeling that I wanted. You know what I'm saying? Now, in hindsight, that might have not always been the right way. You know what I mean? I'm quite sure that My sons wasn't always proud of me, showing up at games, smelling with my cologne, the Biggie scented cologne, or had a few sips before I showed up in there. I don't know whether I was embarrassment to them or not, a case may be. So they might have preferred that I not be there, but I'm gonna be there. I still have a box over here where I literally have. I used to keep stats when my youngest son played basketball in high school. Um, I would never sit with the rest of the parents. If the parents were sitting on this side, I would always go to the other side of the court and sit over there by myself. I was always opposite of the team parents, or with the group of parents that sit over there because you know, well, come on, ref, where the foul at? It that wasn't this here, not that. How you gonna miss the call? I like to try to watch sports, especially like that there when it pertains to my children, unbiased. If you fouled, you fouled. If you know what I mean? And I ain't never want to be one of those ones to be yelling and talking to the refs and all that kind of stuff there. So I would always go over to the other side. But what I was doing was I would go over there. I would always keep. I was a statistician for my youngest son. I got every game he ever played in that I was at. Um, Somewhere over here in all my boxes. I got 10 boxes that I got full of paper. I don't throw anything away, but it'll tell you if he started or when he got in the game, what was his field goals, his make or miss, when did he come out of the game, whether it was dumb fouls he got, how many fouls he got, whether he fouled out. Uh, and then I would always, at the footnote at the bottom, would always give him my take on what I thought of his game, or give him a grade. This was a C minus, did a B plus today, or these are different things that you need to work on. But every single game, as a father, that meant a lot to me. Even though he might don't care, he don't even know about this. Every single game, I had a pen and paper to make sure that I could keep his own stats because I wanted to be invested in my son, or know that him know that I cared. And it might have not looked like I cared. Like, why you got to sit over there? Why you can't sit with everybody else? Why you got to be so separative? Why you got to separate? Like I said, I don't really care how people viewed it. That was just my process. Now, was it right or wrong? I'm not saying that it was. That was just my way. So, a lot of like Drew said it, or like I was saying, and Drew was saying along with me, a lot of people going to determine that totally different. But you not being there, you not being there. I don't think that we get to sit on this high horse and say, well, it's okay if you're working, or it's not okay if you was out with your side chick, or you out there on drugs, or you just didn't choose to go, or whatever the case may be. It's totally different. It's totally different for everybody, but that's neither here nor there. Um, I don't want to. I don't want to. We went on about that long enough, but I ain't. What's you guys take on the 4th of July? Do you think that we should be celebrating it the same as every other American? Because I thought it was distasteful for him to be name calling and talking about Joy Reid. And even when I went in the comments, it was like I really got to learn to stay out of the comments. That's what really be triggering me half the time. Um, People like, yeah, how disrespectful. I mean, the 4th of July is a great day for all of us. It really wasn't. The 4th of July, I agree with Frederick Douglass. The 4th of July had nothing at all to do with me or my people or my ancestors. Now, if you want to drink that Kool-Aid and that's cool with you, fine. But don't look at me or ostracize me because I don't see the world the way that you see it, or I have a different perspective on it. That's just my 2 cents on that. Lastly, before we got up out of here, though, 'cause I don't see any comments about the 4th of July. I don't know how you guys really feel about it other than Jews. I read Jews. Hey, what's good, Dorothy? Too. I'm sorry, I missed your comment, but thanks for tuning in. I love you, appreciate you. This marriage. Um, Saying a clip too earlier today where this famous preacher here in North Carolina. Been thinking about actually reaching out to him to see if he wanted to come on the show eventually, but we'll see. I'll pray about it and see if God have us go that way. Um, but he was talking about how a lot of people, um, a lot of these podcasters and a lot of these different shows nowadays, they're encouraging young men to stay single. And from his perspective was every yo, what's good, Jay? Hey, I promise you, as soon as I finish this show, I'm gonna holler at you because Jay gonna be on the show with us too, man. We gonna get into that too. But you right on time. You right on time. I'd love to hear your intake on this here, and we could get into it when you come on the show too. Um, but he was talking about how a lot of young men and that doing these podcasts and these different forums now, they were talking about how young men need to stay single. From his perspective, though, he was talking about how the Bible talks about a man that findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and every man needs to find a woman. He's not what's the word he used? He's not enamored. Not I forgot word, but he's not jealous of any man, any grown man that sleeps alone at night. Uh, his response was in the middle of him saying this. Well, if I don't sleep alone at night, I got a different woman every night. He's like that life leads to disease, destruction, and everything else. But from his perspective, was every man at some point in life, especially the older that you get, should be married. And I wanted to know you guys' take on that. Um, should everyone at some point in life, should everyone in life, at some point in their life, men or women, should you be married? And I thought that was very interesting. And I'll give my take after we get to a few comments. I want to get you guys' take on it before I give my assessment on that. But at some point in time in life, should everyone be married, or should everyone experience marriage? What do you guys think? Now, those that are married, be careful how you answer that. I don't want you getting into trouble. I don't want to be sparking, uh, raising conversations that you guys don't necessarily want to have. And who was the number one draft pick too? I'm doing the show, so I haven't even I'm listening to my music because I need to settle down a little bit. So I'm listening to my jazz. I didn't even watch any of the draft. Um, Jay said, I don't believe everyone needs to be married. Companionship comes in many ways. Most pastors that scream marriage speak about it because of sin, but not everyone lacks discipline. Um, hey, what's good, Pat? I like that, Jay, too. I like that. Uh, I believe in the institution of marriage and don't regret marrying, but I don't like general rules. Okay. I like that too, Pat. I could dig with that. Um, when you say general rules, what do you mean? Because are you talking about general rules as far as marriage is? Um, what a little elaborate on that a little bit about general rules? Are you talking about in concept of what the dictionary says marriage is, or are you talking about general rules within your own personal relationship that you guys come up with? Um, Drew said that's another that's another to each his own. But if we're going to go into the word, it's different. You have some that will never get married and won't have sex, and that's so I omitted that part, Drew. I like that take, and thanks for your take too. But I omitted that part because a lot of people going back and forth in the comments. Uh, people had different perspectives, and one comment said something to the effect of, "It's just like the Apostle Paul said, though. To be burning with passion, it's better to marry than to burn." Um, so again, everybody's not going to be married, but as far as like you said, Drew, as far as sex in the context of, and that's for believers, because everybody's not a believer. You got atheists, you have Muslims out there, you have Christians out there, but according to the Christian faith, it says that you should marry. It's better to marry than to burn, meaning that burning with passion or lust for sex, and knowing that you're not married or you shouldn't be having sex outside of marriage, so to speak. Um, and I know that to be true too, Drew. Um, which is why I said I'm gonna give my take here in a minute. Just wanted to get to a few more context, saying that someone has to be married to be in good light with God. Okay, got you. That's what you mean by general rules. Absolutely, I think that's perfect. I like that. I do because that that's really good. That's really good. Saying that someone has to be married to be in good light with God. Um, and I think that everybody is totally different. I think that that's so good because your relationship with God is not going to look like mine, and I think that'll get us a lot of us in trouble. And I actually said that at the service that shout out to Getting to Jesus coming 50th anniversary. They had me come up and give a few words, and that was one of the things that I was saying that um, my ministry was able to really take off when I realized that, my per se ministry, when I stopped trying to do ministry the way I thought it should be done based off of the way that I seen ministry done or the way that I looked at men and women of God and okay, this is what it takes to be a real man based off of, what I seen and what is exposed. So it's almost like you're trying to mimic without copycatting, but you're almost becoming a carbon copy of what you think that example is. And it took me a while before I realized I had to stop doing ministry the way that I thought I should do ministry and actually hear God tell me how it is that He wanted to use me for my ministry before, because my ministry is not traditional. It's not going to look like um, other people. But I realized that my ministry is just that, is my ministry. God has put me in situations where I could go places that TD Jakes can't go to, or this pastor or that pastor. Uh, have access to a different demographic because at the end of the day, what God has realized and what he's shown me is no matter who your audience is, who your demographic is, those people have souls too. Those people need to be one as well. So it makes sense. I remember, in the church that again, Jesus coming, the church that I grew up in, like we were so close, like we were all family, and the young people we kind of stuck together for the most part. We still have relationships all these years later, all of us. But I remember as I was always the baby of the group too, so that was a little bit different for me. But as we were getting older and people would start moving away and going through their different life, I felt kind of betrayed somewhat because I thought that we would all be together for the rest of our lives. You know what I mean? Nothing would ever separate any of us. And I remember when I moved to Little Rock, when I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I remember, and one day I was in prayer, and the Holy Spirit spoke to me and was saying, can you imagine? Because I used to be like, man, can you imagine if all of us were still together, the powerful we would be as far as ministry and community and all these different things. And the Holy Spirit was like, why would you want all this power in this one particular under this one particular roof when you all can be dispersed to go out and spread the word throughout the land? And I finally was able to stop looking at it from a selfish perspective because I didn't want to lose my brothers. I didn't want to lose my sisters. I didn't want to lose my examples. But it made that much more sense because, yeah, if you have this, whether you go to Cambridge or Harvard or Yale, one of these top schools, what difference do it make? Why would they all want to go back to be professors there as opposed to going to Oxford, going abroad to spread that generation, that knowledge out abroad and eat to more people? So it made more sense to me from that perspective. Um, Drew said, "I want to know why would you tell young men that? Are they bitter because of what they've been through?" Um, what do you mean, Drew? Pat said the generation behind us have witnessed so much divorce that they aren't interested in it. It's better to just find someone that you connect with. People tend to judge those who live in sin. I agree with that. And now, okay, so here's my assessment. Here's my assessment. I'm gonna give my take, and I'm gonna also give a biblical context, whatever the case may be. And the reason I say that is because it's like this. Before we even get to marriage, you know, I'm one of those people now, biblically or religiously, is definitely inaccurate. But I personally, I believe that people should live together before they get married. And here's why. Because I don't care how much you love someone, I don't care how long you've been in a relationship. Everybody can't live together. It could be something as simple as uh she thinks the ketchup is supposed to go in the refrigerator once it's open. We wanted room temperature. Uh do you put the toilet tissue on the roll? Some of these it sounds minute, but some of these things are what they call deal breakers and all this kind of stuff with people. Um, do you leave the toothpaste top off the toothpaste? Do you leave it sitting on the sink, or do you put it back in the cabinet, or all these different things? I think a lot of time we have these different quirky because we were brought up different in different households. We have these different ways about us. Um, that I kind of think that sometimes it supersedes. Now, is that the biblically way to do things? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just talking about my own personal experience because I've seen couples where I know that they love each other unconditionally, but I don't think that they will be the best living partners um, as far as living together. So sometimes I think you kind of need to go through this, and just because you're living together don't mean that you need to be having sex either. Let's be clear. Um, but it's a tricky subject. So that's what Pat means by living in sin, when what they used to call shacking up and what have you the case may be. Now, biblically speaking, I believe that um well, first of all, let me say this. I don't believe that marriage is for everybody. Um like Jay just said earlier, me personally, I believe marriage is just like anything else. Either you're called to do it or you're not. Everything isn't for everybody. I don't think that everybody should experience marriage at some point in their lives. And the reason people are like, that's interesting. I was like, well, even biblically, when it talks about in Revelation, when it talks about the 144,000 virgins, um, highly doubt that they were married, which lets us know. Even if you want to go from a biblical standpoint, all the examples that we have in the Bible, all of them were married, men and women. So therefore, we have examples that you can live a holy lifestyle and you can be devoted to God and whatnot and not be married. Um, Speaking of which, like even an example of I never got a chance to witness him personally, but the ministry that my home church was birthed out of, Deliverance Evangelistic Center, late Apostle Arturo Skinner. Um, great, great man of God as far as in terms of what he did and the work that he done in ministry and is documented. Even in his early in the '60s, in the early '70s, he was selling out Madison Square Garden, Drew. Like he was a mega preacher before a mega preacher. You know, like literally at Madison Square Garden. I had never heard of that. He was at Madison Square Garden before Billy Graham was. You know what I mean? But they talk about the legacy that he left in ministry. How he would take 200 kids out to dinner after service. Make sure they got something to eat. He was actually the last marriage. My parents were the last marriage that he actually performed before he passed away. Um, and I would hear stories about how he literally had an apartment, Drew. He had an apartment built into this, they used to call the church the temple, but he actually had an apartment above the sanctuary upstairs where he literally stayed at the church and he had this rule. nobody could contact him before 12 noon. Like that was his time alone with God, and from the morning until 12 noon, he was not to be disturbed. Um, excuse me, he would not be disturbed. That was just him and God's personal time. But and I always found that interesting because even when I was married and when I first got into ministry and being married, for me it was like knowing that all entails and everything that comes along with marriage. It's almost like you got to make a choice. Like we were talking about the children earlier, or like I was talking about the children earlier, whether you're going to be at the games or musicals, whatever case may be. I felt like, yeah, you could be a man of God um, as a married man, but I felt like it would be easier to be able to sell out being single. And hear me out. And this is why, because I believe that, and everybody, again, this is not doctrine, this is not theology, this is just my personal. I believe when you think in terms of holiness or trying to please God or live a godly lifestyle, and to be all that God created you to be, live your life not according to your will, but God's perfect will for your life. I believe that it's that much easier to do when you have such a relationship with God where you're you're spending that much time in His presence. I believe that it's easier to operate um, in your so-called area of ministry when you have that much time, because you don't have time to uh, you don't have to worry about date night. You don't have to worry about making sure that she's taken care of emotionally. You don't have to worry about these different things here and that there. Now, on the flip side of that, those all could be excuses. It's almost like when the pandemic first started. I remember the Holy Spirit telling me, he was like, now we're gonna really see. We're gonna begin to see, and I remember posting about this at that time in real time. But now we're gonna see who's real and who's not. There's going to be a lot of different exposures. There's going to be a lot that come to light because for so long, so many people have been saying, you know what? I really would give God more time, but between the kids and practice and work and taking care of the wife and the husband and all these other obligations that I got, the church is like, we're so busy that God gets the scraps of our time. And what the pandemic was showing, the Holy Spirit was like, you're gonna see exposed. A lot of people, because a lot of people were saying that. But what happened was when the pandemic came and everything shut down, there wasn't no practices to go to. Schools were closed. A lot of people were working from home. A lot of the things the world had changed. The world was literally shut down. People would even had some churches closed the doors. No, we're not coming outside. We're gonna go to Zoom. So what is your excuse now? When you don't work on your relationship with God because you got the football practice, because you got working, because you got all of this here and there. Now that all that's been taken away, and that's not even a factor. What is your excuse now for not spending more time with God? What is your excuse now for not trying to be more in His presence and growing that relationship with God Almighty? Because you're stuck in the house now, you got time. So what's going to be your excuse now, if you're using an excuse at all? Or did you really use that time to grow closer to God, to hear His voice, to seek Him, not just love God, but to be in love with God, I think that there's a clear difference. But that was just my take, I really felt like it would be easier from a single perspective because you're so focused. But that's just the way I think. Everybody wasn't just focused on pleasing God, because I hear men and women guys say, well, you got to have some me time too, and everything can't be all ministry and everything can't be all that there. If that's your take, I just felt like that's what it would take for me. Now, Drew said that's tough because I can't live with a woman and don't touch her. I see a nice thick body walking back and forth. Nah, not because I can't do it means it can't be done though. Absolutely, Drew. Hey, and to your point, I'm being totally transparent. I'm being totally transparent. And I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But it's like for me, I remember before I accepted my call, before I really gave my heart back to God, me and my girl at the time, we had moved in because my ex-wife, we had we were pregnant with my oldest son. And I remember, my thing to her was, you know, um, if we're gonna really do this, then we got to get our own place because I ain't gonna be no weekend father. You know what I'm saying? We got to. That was the first thing I said. We got to get our own place, and we got to tell your mother. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to know, and I don't know what it's like to be a woman, so I don't know how difficult that is for a daughter to tell her mom that she's pregnant, and the whole dichotomy of that whole dynamic between that relationship and the history between them, and I don't know what that's like as a woman from a woman's perspective because I've never been in that position. But it was like in the midst of us living together, and within like I think the first year, um, or maybe a year or so, when my son we had got married. No, I had got saved maybe within that first year of us living together. Um, and when I first got saved, I was like, well, listen, there's no way in the world I'm gonna be. I'm just being honest. There's no way in the world I'm gonna be listening. I mean, living in an apartment with the woman and my son that I'm paying for. I'm not gonna be not staying in a house or an apartment that I'm paying for because I'm saved now. If I'm paying rent, yeah, I'm gonna be living here. Now, because I was newly saved, I was committed to not having sex. Needless to say, Drew, that lasted for about 2 weeks. Uh, and we didn't. I didn't go back. I didn't. We didn't sleep together. But I wound up moving out, and I moved back in with my parents until we could get married. Because to your point, it was like, um, yeah, that could be tough. Living with somebody, seeing somebody, it you just automatically think, "Thank you, Jesus." Like, uh, I'm not having any lustful thoughts or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I had to move out for 2 weeks, and we was able to get married in like 2 weeks. I said I'll be back once we actually get married. But so yeah, of course people can live together. Would I advise it? Absolutely not. Why would you tempt yourself in that way unnecessarily? You know what I mean? Even if you're not romantic, I think that it could be a dangerous thing for heterosexual male to be staying with a woman, and to each is everybody's totally different. Everybody's totally different. I'm just one of those type people. I believe that for the average man, um, we put women in two different categories. And this is not popular for me to say this, but I'm just being truthful. I think we got women in two different categories. Either you're doable or you're not. Either you're attractive or you're not. However you want to word it. You know what I mean? I don't want to sound vulgar, but men, that's the way most men look at women. Nah, she's safe. Um, um, I remember telling a young woman that one time too. It was like, and she knew what I meant by she was safe. Like, what you mean I'm safe and all and all that did. But I don't lost my train of thought because I was reading that. But yeah, to your point, Drew, that could be a sticky situation. I wouldn't recommend it at all. Um, Now, however, when I got divorced, I'll be totally transparent, right? When I first got divorced, I remember having a conversation with God, right? And I said, "Look, Lord, um, it's been a fun ride. Um, I loved living for you. I loved working for you, but that's it because I'm not going without the punani. You know what I mean? So therefore, I just got to live a life of sin because I know me and I know it's just a matter of time. And I'm being truthful. And literally, in me saying that, two guys, I literally said this two guys. Cause me, I'm a little different. I talk to God just like I talk to you guys. I talk to God just like I talk to any individual. Um, and I was being honest with him because you can't lie to God. He knows everything. Um, yo, go Knicks, baby. Yeah, we still celebrating. Yeah, Drew. Don't get in the head. What's good, fool? Um, but my thing was within the same instant of me actually saying that I'm gonna go out here and get me some punani because I already know what it is. I know I can't go without. In the same very instant that I said it, I begin to think, well, why is that? Are you that you lack discipline that much that you won't even try to live a holy lifestyle as a single man? And I began to ponder that. I began to think about it, and I said, man, that is kind of crazy that I would automatically think that I can't. Well, it's just like anything else. Like the scripture says, he said, in your weakness am I made strong. And I think a lot of times what we do is we rob God the opportunity to prove himself to us. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna flip this thing on myself. Yeah, sex is my weakness. So God, I'm gonna give you my weakness so you can prove how mighty, how strong, and how capable you are in me giving you the situation. Because yes, this is how I feel. I experienced it. You know, I was laughing. I was just having a conversation with my younger brother this week, and he always talked about back when I was in high school. He remember me telling him, like, listen, if you never had sex before, don't do it. Just focus on your school, focus on your sports, focus on getting your body together, becoming an athlete. Because once you experience sex, your life is never gonna be the same. Don't focus on that right now. Just avoid it at all costs. I don't care about the jokes. It's laughing. I was laughing because I don't remember this saying, but I could. It sounded like something I would have told him back then. Um, but that the women is gonna be there. It's gonna be there down the line. Just focus on you and establishing yourself at this particular time. And during this particular course, I said, you know what, God, I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna allow you to prove yourself mighty and strong in this situation here, because I know that I'm weak. I'm admitting it to you, Father. I come to you. I cast my cares upon you. So let's see how long I can really go without having sex. And I can honestly say, bruh, it was weird for me because I wasn't looking at women like, like I said, putting them in two categories. They either safe or they not. They either tempting or they're not. Like I would just really see women. I wasn't seeing figures. I wasn't seeing beauty. I was in a whole different mindset. What's good, Noel? No, I'm not a heathen. I'm just honest. Don't start with me now. I got the microphone. You know how they like the comedians say, don't try to heckle somebody that got the microphone. You're not on camera tonight. But what's good with you? Um, yeah, and text me later too. How you feeling? How you been feeling? Um, uh, but to my point in that there was I gave God that situation. I gave him my weakness, and I mean I went a good 5 years or so without any sexual encounters. That's just being honest. Um, and even after I slipped up or whatnot, um, I rededicated my life to God and gave it back to Him again and asked for forgiveness, and it was years again. So, I know firsthand that if God is faithful and He is just, He's a keeper. If you want to be kept, That's key right there. If you want to be kept. So therefore, since that own personal encounter and that personal experience, I don't look at anything as far as being well, nah, I can't do that. I can't do that. Nah, you can do anything that you really put your mind to. I won't say anything that you can put your mind to, but if it's something that you really desire, and something that you really want, or you really want to work toward, you can do it. You don't have to. You can live a life of celibacy. Let's put it that way. And that's for a man or a woman. Um, it's just about how bad. What do you really want at the end of the day? Hey, what's good, Uncle D? Uncle D said being married is not for everyone. It's the commitment of the heart that counts. I've been married twice. Me and my current mate, Pat, have been together 20 plus years, and it's the closest to a perfect relationship I could imagine. Oh, that's what's up. And shout out to you too, Uncle D. And to your point, that's what I was saying earlier. So therefore, no, I don't think that everybody should encounter marriage. But that's what we do. And a lot of times I wish I wasn't so programmed when it came to church and whatnot. Because that's how I was too. Um, I don't say that I regret um I wouldn't go as far as say I regret marrying my ex-wife. However, I don't know that we should have got married when we did for the reasons that we did, um, or the reason that I did. I can't speak for her. Um, I know that the reason that I got married when I did was because of the way that I was brought up in church. Again, I just talked about it. We already got married. I mean, we already got a kid out of wedlock. We already play a house. We already living together. So now that I'm saved, well, you got to make an honest woman. You got to get married and all that there. And that was more or less religion in the way that we was brought up. Was I married ready for marriage? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? So I won't say that I regret marrying her. I just regret marrying her at that particular time for those reasons, because that's what everybody else thought that I should do at that particular time. And that wasn't for me. That I don't think that was the right reason to get married. Um, so I wish I had waited. I wish I had you know what I mean? Um, if at all, we could have been co-parenting or whatever the case may be, or different things. But a lot of that was religious context, and I was worried about more or less what everybody else thought as opposed to what I really felt. Because before that situation, me personally, I never wanted to be married. I never wanted to experience marriage in my life. But I never thought about being in ministry. I never thought about being a preacher. I never thought about any of those type things either. Um, but I never wanted to be married because I'm so anti-divorce. You know what I mean? And my security was if I never get married, then I don't never have to worry about divorce. Duh, it's just that simple. So therefore, by me never getting married, I don't have to worry about divorce because I'm so anti-divorce. I'm not a fan of divorce whatsoever. But that's just me. That's just the way I'm programmed. That ain't the way I was brought up or the way I was raised and all that there. I know people that are divorced and I love them dearly, and that things ain't work out, whatever. Like my Uncle D just said, more power to them. Divorce, marriage isn't for everybody, just like divorcing is for everybody. But that was my safety blanket. Was it right? I won't say that. I won't say it was fearful. It was just the way I process things. Or I worry about. I thought things out. If I don't get married, I don't ever have to worry about divorce. So that's no issue. But things change. We change. We evolve and we move on. But again, so I guess we all kind of in agreement on that. Marriage isn't for everybody. I don't think that, and it bothers me when I see a lot of preachers do that. A lot of preachers, they promote marriage and you guys need to get married, but yet and all we have so much divorce. Like I think it was Pat said it a little bit earlier. Like that's another one of my problems with marriages. I think people have different definitions of what marriage should be and what marriage should look like. My problem is a lot of people get married these days just like looking at it like purchasing a car. I try it out for 2 years, and if it don't work, then I could always get another one. I don't think that marriage should be entered into with that type of mindset. I think marriage should be entered into thinking about a lifetime commitment, um, to the actual vows, to death do us part, in sickness and in health. Um, if you're not considering all those different things there, if you're already looking for an out before you even get into it, marriage just might not be for you. Um, and then another part of marriage is, you got to look, you got to think about, you got to have those real conversations. What does marriage look like for you to the person that you're actually married? Because they might be cool with divorce and you might not be in divorce. You need to have real conversations before you even contemplate marriage. They might want to have children. You might not want to have children. They might want a ready-made family, what they call a ready-made family. Some people don't want to deal with that there. I want to marry you. I'm not marrying your children. You got all these different, and you got people that say, well, you can't disassociate the two. We're a package deal and all that there. So you got all these different parameters and you got all these different perspectives that you need to have real conversations before you even entertain the thought of marriage, just based off of what society is saying, or that we think that we should get married or whatever case may be. No, have real conversations before, you know, on what marriage should look like for you. Because one thing I always try to tell people is in terms of marriage and parenting, they do not come with manuals. They do not come with blueprints. You know what I mean? What worked for mommy and daddy is not going to work for your relationship, because you are not your father, and your wife is not your mother. So therefore, you have to determine the own parameters of your marriage and what it should look like. So just keep that in mind. Because we're gonna get ready to get up out of here. That's all I really had for this evening. But I thank you guys for joining me. I thank you guys. I actually feel a little bit lighthearted now. And like I said, thank you for everybody that read. Because when I first made the post about not being sure if I wanted to go out the live, I was moved by how many people reached out to me. You good? Everything okay? And it really wasn't nothing like that. I just didn't want to go in on the individual that posted what I said about the 4th of July. I didn't want to seem personal. I didn't want to come across like I feel like they do. So I didn't really want to speak off the top of my head publicly without that. So, but thank you guys for, kind of just reeling it in and being able to have a conversation about these different things without even getting off kiltered. And, I really appreciate you guys each and every week, man. Drew said, I think some don't have understanding of what they really getting into, bro. It's serious. It's not a game. And dude, you just said it. That I believe, but that's based off of how you feel and how I feel, because marriage is that serious to you, because marriage is that sacred to me. We got to realize though, it's not that for everybody else, and that's the problem that I have, because like I said, a lot of these people, it's almost like I said, getting a car or renting a house. Well, I got to get a mortgage when I can rent. I don't know how long I want to live here. Then you got people that purchase cars. You got people that lease cars because they know after 2 years I'm getting tired of driving this. I want something different. You know what I mean? So everybody has and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but those are real conversations that you need to have before you even entertain that, because this person might want this car for the rest of their life, and you already thinking 2 years. 2 years, you going from black to red or black to white. You want to go from a coupe to a pickup truck. So you got to have those conversations to make sure everybody's on the same page. That way, we don't end up in divorce or separated over something minute that could have been avoided if we had to have real conversations up front. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you, man. We're gonna be talking next week. I believe next week, myself and the guests, we're gonna be talking about daughters without fathers, and on there, it was something else. I'll post throughout the week to let you guys know for sure. Some view marriage and children as a milestone, not a commitment. Exactly. Like and it bothers me that bothers me too. Not you, Pat, but I'm just saying in general. People, you hear people say like, you don't know what you don't know really what womanhood is until you become a mother and all that. But I know plenty of women for for many different reasons that have no desire at all to be a mother. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole bunch of people that don't desire to be a mother. Um, they worried about their career. They don't want to mess their figure up. They don't want an actual human being to come through their body, and that's their right. So how dare you tell them that they're not a real woman if they don't want to be a mother? Everybody's totally different. Everybody's totally different, and it's okay if we have different perspectives and outlooks on life. You know what I mean? That's part of it too. We There's a reason that even twins have different fingerprints because we all different people. We're all different individuals. We all have a different DNA and we all have a different makeup, and that's what makes us us. And that's the beautiful thing about life. Because who wants to be just like anybody else when you could be your own individual person? Um, so yeah, that's that. Um, so yeah, to Pat's point, don't let you feel like don't you let your life feel like a failure if you've never been married or if you don't have a parent based off of other people's opinions. Because those their opinions are just that. They're not yours. So don't let that other people's parameters dictate what success or what life should be like for you. Um, Govern yourself accordingly to thy own self be true. Having said that, I love you all, man. I hope you all have a great week. Happy early born day to my mom, who'll be celebrating her birthday on tomorrow. Um, so love you, mom. I hope you all have a good week. Stay safe out there. Um, Dan said you sound like a liberal. We can discuss that when you come back on, bro. I'm a free thinker. I don't identify as anything other than a free thinker. I identify as Marvin Bennett Jr. I approve that message. Man, you guys have a great week. Like I said, I look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday night. I love you again, Miles and Stones. And the first show I'm trying to schedule, I believe, is the June 9th episode. That's when we will officially celebrate the 6 year anniversary, being that June just flew by on me and I didn't have anything mapped out. So we will be celebrating that within the first 2 weeks in July, our 6 year anniversary. I want to thank all the former guests. I want to thank all you guys for supporting it. And to the former guests, before I get out of here real quick, and I'll make mention on that show too. I really want to thank you guys for being on here and taking out time to do this with me, because I realize now it's not necessarily always easy to come on a type of platform that's actually live. It's easy to me, and that's just my perspective. Again, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's easy to be uh, predetermined or pre-recorded, and you have all the questions that you're going to be asked, so you can come up with the nice answers. Yeah, that's the way we could do things, but I choose not to. I like authentic conversations. So I realize that as comfortable as I'm talking to people and having real conversations, that's not everybody's forte. So everybody that's ever been on the show, former guests, I really want to thank you guys for going that, because a lot of people will let me know I don't really want to be on camera, and I don't, what are we going to be talking about? I don't know. It's a conversation. So for those that went out decided they comfort zone to be on the show with me, I really, really, really appreciate you guys, because I know that is not always an easy thing to do for everyone. So I really appreciate you all, and love you all dearly. But yeah, like I said, we're gonna be within the next month, we're gonna be celebrating 6 years. The official anniversary was June 9th. The first show was on June 9th, 2020. So I appreciate you guys, for all you guys that have viewed, all you guys that have subscribed, all you guys that have told others about the show and having them subscribing. I really appreciate it. It does not go unnoticed, and I do not take you all for granted. I love you all. I appreciate you. But as usual, in signing off, DeAndre and Lisha, know that Daddy loves you intentionally, but I also love you unconditionally. Till next week, peace.